Till, our film, is exploring what happens in preparation for Emmett to travel to the South to enjoy a vacation with his family, with his cousins. And after the death and lynching of him, we are witness to the bravery and the courage that Mamie Till Bradley navigates in order to find justice for her son, to find some semblance of justice for herself, and therein justice for the Black community that is experiencing this on an amplified basis. Because it wasn't just happening to, it didn't just happen to her family. It was happening in a proliferated fashion. And there are moments, and this is a moment that gets amplified because of the nature of the time. The way she navigated space as a woman, as an elegant woman in a very masculine patriarchal world, be it Black or white, right? She is leading with a divine feminine, leadership that, how do you do that? Like it's that awe-inspiring to watch. She's not in pictures with women, she's in pictures with men. And yet she is very porous in being able to take all of this stuff in because she was living a very, very different life. She was not, and to learn that she was creating a particular kind of a boundary that happens when understanding Southern Black experience. She's a Southern-born Black woman, but she is living this Chicagoan respectability life, and that life is still impacted by the happenings and the reckonings and the wretchedness of the South. And so she undergoes this insane wave of change personally, and then moves forward in activating herself after all of this to influence others. So it's all of that, like the kind of whirlwind experience that she had, I had no clue about. We get to see how Mamie fights for justice. We get to see how she changes the interior of her, coming to understand that Black people are all deeply connected, that all people are deeply connected. And if something is happening to one of us, it is happening to all of us. And we witness her come into a particular kind of power, a feminine power that we witness in her growing in leadership to push and care for the memory and the love that she has for her son, and therein the memory and love that she has for the community, the Southern community, and therein the global community, in the way that she empowers herself to tell her story, to tell the experience of what has happened to her family, and how she transcends it to become the woman that we've witnessed through the decades post-1955, post the loss of Emmett, to be an educator, to be an activist, and to be the progenitor of the civil rights movement. At the start of the film, we catch them singing together, enjoying each other, enjoying what Emmett thoroughly did, which was music, and just being alive and free in that moment. And then we fall into the kind of matriarchal feeling that you always have and wanting to care for your child. And that kind of begins to stroke over the experience of the film. What does it mean to be a mother, a Black mother, and wanting to make sure your child is okay, feeling what is happening to your child, and then trying to mold and sculpt whatever you can from what has happened to your child. We're just at a point where things are activated even more as a result of social media. So we get to witness it firsthand. We get to witness it instantly. Whereas with regard to the media that was happening in 1955, it was a fresh thing, right? And Mamie was intelligent enough to know to navigate that space and to utilize it to her benefit, which therein made the understanding and about what happened to Emmett that much more broadened. So we're dealing with the same things today. When Mamie made the choice to have a public viewing, to have an open casket, she is inviting community in to mourn with her. The levels of challenge, horrible term, like not words don't do enough to explain, to give a thorough enough understanding as to what she endured. I don't have a thorough enough understanding. You know, the only people who understand that are the black mothers who've lost their children to police violence, or the black mothers who've lost their children to violence in a particular manner. That she wanted community to come to her. She wanted to be able to continuously tell. I think that's one manner of telling the story. So to tell the story is to show. Right? So we show, we tell. Therein she started to tell. She started to go on these fundraising tours with the NAACP to garner support to even get down to Mississippi. So that's a manner of telling a story, by showing. And then there's another manner of telling the story by literally speaking it. And she said that it was therapeutic for her to tell the story. And you don't get through anything like this without community. You just don't. And that's what happens when we lose anyone in a violent manner or of natural causes. We bring ourselves together. And so with that, Mamie made the choice to share with the world what is happening to us, what was happening to us, what continues to happen to us. And that enabled her to heal, I think. Working with Whoopi Goldberg, Whoopi is, I've said this before, she's a bit of a trickster. She's hilarious, right? She brought levity to a set that's dealing with a deep weight and tension. Like, everybody's feeling it, right? The crew is feeling it, the cast is feeling it. It's something that is just sitting on you. But when Whoopi showed up, it got to do this a little bit. It got to float. Working with Jalen the first time, it's via the audition. And Jalen came in super charismatic. He complimented me on my smile. And I'm like, excuse me, little boy, who you talking to? You know? But that was that spark of personality and flair that says, oh gosh, you know, if we're talking about Emmett, we're talking about somebody who's full of vibrancy, who's full of a particular kind of freedom, that other people maybe at the time didn't quite understand. Like, you just go, who is this person, and what spirit is working around them? And that's what he came with. And Jalen has come with that throughout the shoot. You know, he's just a dear heart. The biggest thing that I hope audiences to carry with them, to seep into their beings, is change, and how change is a communal effort. It's an emotional undertaking to witness and to feel any semblance of what this film endures. And even as a woman moving through the mourning that she was moving through, she had the wherewithal and the open heart and mind and spirit to be aware of who she was and who she needed to be and who she wanted to become after this. And that was a person of community. In this film, I play Emmett Till, and let me tell you, he is a joyful, outgoing, funny, goofy kid who just loves family and loves his mother. Working with Chinonye is amazing. What am I saying? She's a terrific director, and when I tell you she gives the best gems, it's just amazing to even be in her presence. Working with Danielle has also been amazing. She is one of the most dedicated actors I know. Like, she's here in the mornings and the last one to get out. When I tell you, she takes her craft so seriously, and it is so inspiring to even watch. I was so starstruck. Me and my mom were just like in awe because she's so hilarious, so funny, and such a gem to work with. The most rewarding, I would say, is that just being a part of it. You know, there's so much good that will come out of this, and there's so many minds that will be opened up to the concept of the story that we're telling, and just to have my name in that conversation is a reward in its own. Well, my generation, I think it would definitely open their eyes, considering, to be honest, in schools nowadays, some schools don't even teach this sort of history. So for a movie to teach kids of my generation and the generations to come, I think that is the biggest honor I've ever had.
This project, I don't even think it's a project. I really think it's something that will move and change the hearts of people out there.
To describe the plot of this movie and explain the film, I would say it's a piece of history that's bittersweet. Bitter in the way that it's an atrocious situation that occurred here. It was unnecessary. It should never have happened, but it did happen in so many instances in history. And sweet because it was the doormat, the opening of so many civil rights inspirational moments. I got this script and I read it, and I thought I knew the Emmett Till story, and I realized I had no idea of the impact that this event had on our history and our lives. She's such a powerful, strong, amazing woman, and her story, her courage is the thing that, like I said, it was a doormat to open up a lot of events that happened afterwards as far as the civil rights movement. So she stands at the forefront, and this story stands at the forefront. So it's not just because there were so many of us getting killed down in the South, getting hanged, and getting beat up, getting shot, getting intimidated. That was an everyday occurrence. But this one was significant because it was a boy, and also because of what Emmett Till, his mother, decided to do in the aftermath. It's something that needs to be brought to the light. And I think that when anyone sees this film, no matter where they are, in what part of the country or what part of the world, it has to resonate with them. And they've got to say that there has to be a change. And even, any kind of bad action that happens with anyone, it reflects on all of us. And this is certainly putting the microscope on our society and our race relations. And this is something we need to know about. I find her to be a very, very competent director. She has confidence in herself. She has confidence in what she's doing. She's very meets you halfway there. I mean, she's very collaborative in the work that in what she's asking for and expecting of an actor. I'm enjoy working with her so much I can't say. And her spirit is always uplifting. She's there. She's a great leader. And like I say, when you working with a director in film and you feel that they know what they want, it makes your work that much easier. Because if they know what they want and you know the path that you're going to get there, it's a perfect collaboration. You get there and it's a seamless transition to move from what you're thinking to give her what she needs in this project. And she's been amazing. I have enjoyed it, like I say, a tremendous amount. From the very first moment that I met her, I didn't know her work. But from the very first moment that I met her, I felt a connection. Something was just like, man, this is family for sure. She has all the joy, the humor. I mean, because at first I was expecting, someone who's involved and wrapped up in a role like this is a very serious role. This is not frivolous stuff. And I said, I'm going to give her space. But from the moment I met her, it was like she embraced me and I embraced her. She called me dad and I called her daughter. And her watching her work to me is priceless, because she can move in and out of this. She knows who this woman is, and she's nailed her perfectly, but she doesn't let that stop her from seeing who she is as a person. We laugh and we joke, we sing this gospel song, I Won't Complain. We just every afternoon pretty much we burst out into this this loud rendition of I Won't Complain. And she just goes, so deep into it. She's a beautiful actress. I'm expecting amazing things to happen to her from this film and from her career just moving forward. I could not have asked for a better daughter in a film like this. When the audience see this film or after seeing this film, I want them to be able to know that this event occurred in the history of the Black History movement. I mean, it happened. I want them to know that it's not something that can be swept under the rug and discarded. I want them to be able to see it, to meet it head on, and to learn from it, to learn that this kind of injustice will not be tolerated. It will be a tool as we move forward for all of us to speak up when we see injustices occur, to be able to be strong enough and brave enough like Mamie Till was.
I don't know the first time I heard because I'm sure I was a kid. But it's one of those stories that if you're Black, you've heard about it. If you have brothers, you've heard about it. If you were sent down to see relatives down in the South, it was like, listen, and white people speak to you, don't say anything. Just yes ma'am, no ma'am, and keep on rolling, So I'm sure, and I saw the picture. I remember seeing that picture and not understanding what it was. And my mother said, that is a little boy. It's just a cautionary tale for all of us. If no one says anything and this continues to go on the way that it does, this will never stop. Because we all like to think that sanctioned racism is gone, but it's not. She's a young director, and she's fresh, and she knows what she wants to see, and so hopefully we're giving it to her. I've been waiting 10 and a half years. Keith Beauchamp has been waiting 28 years. He's the reason we were able to get the case reopened. Now, it's not hardly finished because there are people still alive, whose reckoning a whole nation should be yelling for. If we got the murderer of Medgar Evers finally put behind bars, and we need to get all the murderers of Emmett Till finally put behind bars. I hope they'll be reminded that he was a kid, and two adult men decided to go in and beat up, mutilate, and murder a kid. And if we're the nation that continues to okay and say that's all right, if no one stands up and says, well, we're not gonna have this anymore, if that's the country we are, it's quite sad. I like to think we're the country that says, you know what? Yeah, this took too long. This took too long.
I think if you're a Black person in this country and you have any awareness of the civil rights movement at all, you can't really pinpoint a particular time that you know about it. I feel like I've always known about Emmett Till's story. I think that what I didn't know until I got older was how brave Mamie Till Bradley was, in terms of insisting that his casket be open and let the world see what they did to him. What I also didn't know was how much of a sham the trial was and all those details. So I think that I've always known about Emmett, but just the depth of the struggle, the depth of the tragedy just unfolded to me as I got older. I read the script and I just thought, this is something that matters. This is something that's important. And I rarely feel that way when I get a script to read. Usually I read it and it's kind of like, okay, let me figure this out, let me just do this. But when I felt immediately the sense of responsibility and the opportunity there was to really do something special. Well, in the film, I play Gene Mobley, who is Mamie's boyfriend slash fiance, so to speak, at the time that Emmett is killed. And he's someone that's there with her throughout the entire tragedy, throughout the entire process. He's someone who was really Mamie's rock throughout this entire ordeal. There were times when she would put up a brave front for the public, or she would even put up a brave front for her own mother within her own family. And I think Jean Mobley was somebody that she could be weak with, someone that she could lean on when she was at her lowest. And I would like to think that that's the function that Jean played in her life, and then that I'm playing in the story. Working with Shanoya was just incredible. From the beginning, I mean, during the casting process, just classy and respectful and so passionate all the way along. And then once we got here on set, you know, her passion, her care for these people, for this story, her vision for what she wants this movie to be were very clear. And what Shanoya is brilliant at is being able to communicate her vision in a way that I can understand as an actor, and so that I'm able to try and give her what she wants and what she needs as best I can. Oh, Danielle Deadwyler is phenomenal to work with. She's a force of nature. She has like a stunning amount of stamina, commitment. There were some days that I was in awe of what she was doing. Her ability to stay in this, you know, space of anguish for long periods of time. I'm just, you know, she's just unbelievable. This is stuff that's still going on. Black men, black boys are still victimized by a culture that doesn't value our lives. And people really need to take that to heart and to understand it. And I think to see this story, to see this happen to a 14-year-old boy, and to see the lack of justice that he got, and the lack of justice that he still hasn't gotten justice. Those men were never spent a day in jail for his murder. The woman that lied about him, she's still alive and she belongs in jail. And I'm hoping that this movie can get the word out there again that Emmett deserves and demands justice and accountability.
The character I play in the film is Mose Wright, who is Emmett Till's uncle. And he comes to see Mose, who lives in Mississippi. So the tragedy that happens on my watch, on Moses' watch. He's a good man. They call him preacher because he is a preacher. He was one of those pastors that went all over and preached. He's well respected, loved by his friends, loved by his family, a good upstanding man in the community, and a very hard worker. I feel like the story that we're telling is finally the story with all the specifics that I think a lot of people don't know about. So I feel honored to be a part of the telling, a true telling of this story in film that just hasn't been out there before. And I think it'll be very important for a lot of people to know. And we live in these times that we live in now where a movie like this is very important, not just because of its certainly historical and educational aspect, but for its social, political aspect as well. So I feel, I don't know, honored to be part of the real story, the facts. Shanoya is great. The process has been wonderful working with Shanoya. She had talked to me, we first got together on Zoom talking about the role, and you know, she works the way that I like to work. She's very much I'd say an actor's director, if you will, which is so beautiful to find in this business. And she's really doing a great job in telling the story. She's really bringing it to life in certainly a way that it hasn't been brought to life. And she's focusing on these moments that we don't know about that go into the story of Emmett Till and bringing them to a wonderful life. So she's been great to work with. She is a fabulous actress, and she brings such beauty, dignity, pride, intelligence, love to this role. And I think that a lot of us don't really know Mamie, and this is a story that's really circled around her and the choices that Mamie made that allowed this Emmett Till story to be what it is. But I think it's truly she makes it truly a story of a mother and a mother who loves her son and a son who loves his mother. And you don't get to see that too often in these circles of films where it's African Americans, and you get to see the love of a mother and a son, a beautiful son who was so incredible and charismatic, had such a life in front of him and for this tragedy to befall, and how she took the tragedy and made it an event for the world to see, and for hopefully justice to come out of that. My hope is that this film will bring some justice in a sense, and bring some knowledge to people around the world as to what truly happened and why something like this can never happen again, and for people to stand up and do the right thing before things get so far gone that something terrible like this could happen again. So hopefully this is a truthful, cautionary tale to not just America, but to the world, to make sure this does not happen again.
Well, I approached coming onto this film, I think, with great reverence, and with the need to get it right. And I think that the commitment is here in all quarters of the filmmaking collective. We want to represent this murder in its proper context, and we want it to be understood as the seminal moment in American history that it was, and certainly to demonstrate the continuing resonance of this brutal moment in our history. Dr. Theodore Roosevelt Mason Howard was an unsung hero of the civil rights movement. He was born in poverty in Kentucky. He miraculously made his way to California, where he studied medicine. He was a brilliant student. He then went initially to Nashville and then eventually to a place called Mound Bayou, Mississippi, which black people had built during Reconstruction as an all-black town. And Dr. Howard immediately energized Mound Bayou, built a hospital, a beautiful home, an Olympic-sized swimming pool for the entire community, the first swimming pool, in fact, for black people in Mississippi. He had a farm. He had a zoo that he built for the children, a park that he built for older people. He had a life insurance company, and one of his employees was a young man out of Alcorn A&M College, a young graduate by the name of Medgar Evers. He was, of course, a mentor to Medgar Evers, as he was to Fannie Lou Hamer, and eventually to Jesse Jackson after he moved to Chicago in 1956, where he lived until his death in 1976. Dr. Howard, although he was a distinguished physician, had a brilliant sense of humor and a very keen sense of self-defense. He believed in armed self-defense. He never went anywhere without a gun out of reach. And he was a bodyguard for Mamie Bradley when she came down for the trial of the men who had allegedly, and then of course certainly, murdered her son, because they admitted that they had done so in an interview with Look magazine after the trial, in which they were found not guilty. So Dr. Howard certainly made his mark, and he paid a great price for that. He had established a number of businesses, obviously, had built up a community, but the threats against his life became unbearable, and he left in 1956, just a year after these events, and went to Chicago.
I was only interested in making this film if it was my vision. So I go to the meeting with the producers in New York, and one of the first things I say is, I need to rewrite the script from page 1. Okay. It's like, oh, okay. The protagonist is Mamie. It's all about Mamie, her emotional journey. I'm not interested in going into these tributaries. Okay, that's really what we want. That's why we reached out to you. I said, okay. There will be no physical violence against Black people on screen in my version of this film because I'm not interested in relishing in that kind of physical trauma. Yeah. Absolutely, yes. It's like, damn. And so, okay, we're gonna begin and end in a place of joy. We need to see some joy in it. Yes, that's what we want. That's why we want you. People are always trying to dehumanize us, kill us, gaslight us, tell me that I'm not enough, that I am not worthy. It is a political act for me to tell a story that centers the humanity of a Black woman, regardless of what the story is about, regardless of the genre. The story can have absolutely nothing to do with racism or sexism, but just seeing a Black woman exist freely on screen is a radical act. And I'm very intentional about that. I mean, I believe that part of Mamie's activism was her standing unapologetically in her worth, in the worth of her son, in the worth of Black people, in her humanity, in her son's humanity, in the humanity of Black people, and standing in that unapologetically. And to do that in the face of such white supremacist capitalist patriarchy is extraordinary. It's extraordinary to do it now. It's extraordinary to do it in 1955. And I think that that's part of what makes her so incredible. Most of us would not know who Emmett Till was if it weren't for Mamie. And so there was so much about her life. There was so much about the nuances of the time period in terms of the Citizens Council, in terms of Brown versus Board of Education. There was so much context to the story and to the time period that I had no idea about until I was really doing research for this film, Till. But a lot of that I didn't learn in school, and I think a lot of people don't learn about it in school. You know, we just get like a footnoted version, if that. Mamie was very aware and intentional about the power of the image. And this was a time when TV was just starting to get even more popular and even more accessible, right? And so I think Mamie was very intentional about being able to use that to spread the word and to spread her message and to really bring a level of awareness that would result in a level of change and activism, and to galvanize people into doing something. I wanted to make Emmett human. He was a boy. He was a boy, and he did not care. He was not thinking about racial politics. He just wanted to play and laugh and make jokes and live and be. And so it was really important to me that that is the perspective in which we are focusing on when we're with Emmett. And when we're with Mamie and Emmett, we're able to see what Mamie is trying to shield him from and how completely oblivious or unaware or uncaring he is of some of those kinds of dangers. So in the beginning of the film, Mamie is very intentional about trying to mask him from this racist security guard in Marshall Fields. You know, this is a place that they've gone to many times before, and he just wants to go buy a wallet. And she doesn't want to tarnish that very pure experience with this really ugly reality, you know? And so it was really important to me that we're able to see those different layers, to see what Emmett is being shielded from, while also kind of living in his own kind of childish kind of innocence as well. Dr. T.R.M. Howard was an unsung civil rights hero whom I had never heard about until I began research for this film. And I was really sad and shocked that I'd never heard about him. And I think the majority of people have never heard of Dr. T.R.M. Howard. He was a mentor to many of the civil rights icons that we know of today. And he was a self-made multimillionaire who used his money to help finance protection for many Black people who were either trying to migrate up north or who participated in the trial against J.W. and Roy. He used his money to help build Mound Bayou, a community that I also hadn't heard about until I started research for this film. But he helped build an all-Black town that was really rooted in Black empowerment and Black ownership. And he was also very active in politics, and he created the Regional Council for Negro Leadership, and he was very active in voting rights efforts. When he first met Danielle in person, I played the song that plays in the opening of the film, Sincerely, by the Moonglows. And I just played it on my cell phone. And he just gets up, spins Danielle around, and they just dance. And he just was so comfortable in his skin. He was so comfortable and confident in who he was, and that is what Emmett embodied. He had such a confidence about him, such a carefreeness about him, such a joy about him. And Jalen really embodied all of that. Danielle Deadwyler is a star. Danielle was made for this role. She is one of the most gifted actors I have ever worked with and I have ever witnessed. And I knew nothing about her when we were casting. Like we looked at so many actors, I mean so many actors. And then after a couple months, I watched an audition tape of Danielle Deadwyler. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Her audition tape was like making me feel so many things. I was captivated by her. She is craft driven. She does the work and is so invested in doing the work and doing the work excellently. Every single take that Danielle did on Till was great. I mean, and she she took adjustments, you know, like she wasn't just doing the same thing over and over and over again. You give a little adjustment and I mean, it's a whole other kind of performance. So, I mean, she's an editor's dream, she's a director's dream, she's an actor's dream, I mean, she's a cinematographer's dream. I mean, my God, the woman is gorgeous. And she's a star. She is a movie star. Well, Alma was Mamie's mom, and Alma was someone who was the matriarch of the family. You know, Emmett and Mamie had a kind of more of a brother-sister relationship. And so after Emmett's lynching, Mamie kind of stood up in a matriarchal way, in a way that she hadn't before. And at that same time, Alma broke down, and she couldn't kind of stand in that kind of matriarchal way. Mamie had a matriarchal kind of role, and Mamie had to kind of step up for them both, and in a way that was a really interesting kind of role reversal between the two. But Alma was always somebody who was an anchor for Mamie, you know, and was kind of the disciplinarian in the house, and so it was really important for me to kind of show the complexity in the relationship really happens when that role reversal starts to happen. And Whoopi was somebody who, you know, it's Whoopi Goldberg. She's an incredible actor, and she was not attached to play Alma. Like, it was a role that I offered her, and I asked her, would she, you know, would you want to do it? And she said it would be an honor, you know, to be even considered for the role. And I was like, all right, Whoopi, I'll consider you for the role. Okay. There were so many people who were a part of Black freedom movements, civil rights movements, this story, who show up in the film, and I wasn't able to include everybody, but you know, one of the people is Medgar Evers and Myrlie Evers. You know, to watch this film, knowing what will happen to Medgar 8 years after this, is harrowing. And I think if you know what's going to happen to Medgar 8 years later, I think it really kind of deepens his character and your understanding of him even more, and his commitment to the movement even more. But it was really important that I also show people like Medgar, people like Myrlie as human beings. I mean, one of my favorite scenes in the film is the scene between Myrlie and Mamie drinking tea. And to watch that scene, especially knowing what will happen to Medgar 8 years later, it's chilling. I mean, I think I get chills just thinking about it, but also it just shows two Black women being. And I'm really excited about showing all of these different kind of civil rights icons as people. I'm really, really excited to have been given the opportunity to make a film that is rooted in the humanity of Black people, and it's artful, and it's crafted, and it's cinematic, and it's relatable and accessible. And that I believe that so many people, regardless of your race, regardless of your gender, regardless of what your background is, you are going to connect on a human and emotional level to this Black woman on screen. And that gets me so excited. And I'm really, 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 really proud of that.
The film that Chinonye has crafted is actually a celebration of Mamie Till. It's a celebration of her tireless work. It's a celebration of her resilience. It's a celebration of her power. And it is a centering of a Black woman who is so crucial to American history, who's so important to our history, and frankly, who's emblematic of thousands, if not more, Black women who have not been recognized in this way. So I think what's important about seeing the movie is really honoring this incredible human being who, you know, I think so much of us can relate to, and how much she loved her son. She channeled all of that emotion and feeling into activism that is still resonant today. It's taken as long as the making of this movie, and more so for there to be a federal anti-lynching act passed, and it's named for Emmett, which would not have happened were not for the efforts of Mamie Till, allowing her son's body to be seen by the public, allowing us to not look away, in fact, forcing and compelling us to look at what had happened in the, not hope, but in the, kind of insistence that this not be allowed to happen again, and that if it did, it wouldn't happen in silence, and that there would be justice for the victims that came after. I think that the intention and the spirit behind Till is to make a movie that is a celebration of Black culture, that is a celebration of Black women, and that hopefully those audiences come to and recognize that it's not just that we're treading on our pain, it's not just that we want to exploit our trauma. Quite the contrary. There is so much to the Black American experience that we still have not seen accurately and authentically depicted on screen. And while this story also happens to have an incredible political and social impact, this movie is first and foremost about us. And I think you see that in a lot of the details. I think you see that in the costuming. You certainly see that in the casting decisions. And we want for audiences to show up and be able to experience that part of the storytelling too, as much as they show up and understand that this is a part of our history that needs to be told. It was so important for us to honor Mamie by having the right actress play her, and Danielle's audition just blew us all away. It's absolutely, the performance that she gives with her eyes, but it's also who Danielle is as a person. It's her connection to this story. It's her connection to this history. It's her own personal awareness, consciousness, and activism. So we couldn't have been luckier than to find her to play this role. Yeah, I think Mamie Till Mobley is an American superhero. I think that she changed the course of history. I think that she affected millions of lives directly and indirectly for the better. I think that she was a catalyst for change. She was a catalyst for progress. And like so many other Black women who shouldn't have to be this, she was a self-sacrificing warrior who put her feelings in some compartment somewhere away to do something that would help other children like her son, that would protect and save other children like her son, and that would let people know that they can't get away with this kind of a heinous crime. So absolutely, unequivocally, she's an American hero, but she's so much more than that. I wouldn't even want to reduce her to that. And, you know, we should make movies about her, and we should also talk about her, you know, in our day-to-day lives. We should continue to tell our children these stories, not just as a cautionary tale that unfortunately is still relevant of the dangers of the world, but also as an inspiration for what one human being can do. One of the things that was the most remarkable to me when I first read Chinoya's script was the first 30 pages or so that are the story of Emmett Till, the boy. And there was such humor and exuberance and joy and innocence. And I just thought, you know, I would watch a movie about this kid. You know, I want to know more about him. And I think that it's incredibly important that people whose lives were taken from them in this tragic way that then end up becoming catalysts for change, that they're not just reduced to that part of their life, that they're not just reduced to what happened to them. We wanted to celebrate who Emmett was. You know, this is also a movie that's a love story of mother and son, and not that you wouldn't hope that any parent and any, you know, mother would fight for their child, but I know and believe that, you know, the depth of love and care that she had for him was a huge part of why she felt compelled to, again, put her feelings aside and fight for justice for him till the end of her life. So it's incredibly important that, you know, Emmett and all of who he was, the fullness of who he was, be a part of this story too.
The Emmett Till Legacy Foundation was founded in 2005, and it was founded by family members. I'm one of the co-founders, and one of my cousins, Charles Reese, is the other co-founder, and along with several of our other family members who live all across the country. It was important for us to bring in different voices and different ages to make sure that we were clear about the legacy and clear about how to preserve it and what our roles should be. We started out by making sure that people heard the story of Emmett Till, and then also to preserve that memory, we needed to tell the story along with share documentaries that were out, Keith Beauchamp's documentary, along with one that we created called Who Killed Emmett Till. And then it was important for us to connect the past to the present and future. So that's how we began in 2005. We actually established E-Till, which is the Emmett Till Institute for Leadership and Learning, where we fold in our programs. One of our programs, our signature program, is The Power of History Turning Tragedy into Triumph, where we take Emmett's story into colleges, universities, and schools all across America. The other program is called Justice in Time, where we connect in with police officers and young people in doing sort of a role exchange, but we put them in the place of each other, if you will, and how those interactions had become deadly, but how we could turn that around, flip the script, if you will, and do Know Your Rights training for those young people as well. And then we honor Mamie Till Mobley with a women's empowerment symposium, which is called Loving from the Inside Out. And we help other women understand that if they love themselves first, that they can make the kind of decisions that Mamie was able to make, courageous decisions, and have better control over their lives. I had an experience to be on the set of Till, just sporadically, but that experience was surreal for me because I could see just the kind of work that had to be done behind the scenes, the clothing that had to be selected, the location, and the people who had to take their rightful places, along with the transformation of Danielle Deadweiler into Mamie, and to see the kind of dedication and concentration to become Mamie. And then see the work of the producers and others and their dedication, their skills in making sure that the story was told properly and that it was truthful and that everything just matched. I didn't know at the time how it would come together, but it's amazing how all of that movement comes together to tell the true story of a mother's love, her perseverance, her courage, and the dedication towards justice for her only son. In 2020, we launched the Justice for Emmett Till campaign because there was no movement on the case. The DOJ had reopened Emmett Till's case in 2017, and they were in the process of an investigation. The promise, though, was to periodically update our family on what they were doing and how they were moving forward. And we didn't receive any updates. So we went to the media. One of the close next of kin, Thelma Wright Edwards, Mose Wright's daughter, and I interviewed with The Guardian. We also, I wrote an op-ed in USA Today. And basically the title of those articles was, "Will There Ever Be Justice for Emmett Till?" After that, we launched a campaign which included a petition, and we asked the public to text Emmett to 243-725 in order to sign this petition asking for the Department of Justice, along with the state of Mississippi, along with the DA, to look at this case, to look at all the evidence that had been collected, and to bring charges against Carolyn Bryant Donham. We knew from the FBI reports that we had read that she was culpable in the kidnapping and the lynching of Emmett Lewis Till. So that started our journey towards justice, and it also led us to look for further evidence, because in 2021 they closed the case. The DOJ closed down their investigation, and we knew that not all evidence had been looked at. In our research, we found that the FBI and none of the investigation took place in Lafleur County, where the kidnapping actually took place. And so we decided to go there to look for the warrant, and lo and behold, we found the outstanding warrant, physical warrant, for Roy Bryant, J.W. Milam, and Carolyn Bryant Donham. The name on the actual warrant is Mrs. Roy Bryant. So that is where we are today, with continuing to demand for justice for Emmett Till.